Despite being a prodigy, despite clearly having one of the most versatile and powerful Zanpakuto in the series, and despite having numerous fights and opportunities to show off his abilities and what he can do, for the majority of the series, Toshiro Hitsugaya has never really felt all that powerful to me. He's never really been able to capitalise on that sense of danger and ability that should be inherent with being a captain. And I think there are a number of reasons for this. I think crucially Hitsugaya is still quite inexperienced when compared to his contemporaries. He's still of course a child at the end of the day. But perhaps even more important is I think Hitsugaya is inherently an incredibly pure and good person, who I think often holds and pulls his punches in battle. He doesn't ever really seem to be out to kill, apart from against poor old Xiaolong at the start of the Urankar arc. And I think this makes perfect sense for his character. When he freezes his enemies, when he incapacitates them, that's enough for Hitsugaya to consider the fight to mostly be over as long as he has eliminated the threat. But because of this, because Hitsugaya does seem to pull his punches the vast majority of the time he fights, we never really get to see what makes him a prodigy, what makes him so powerful, what makes him stand out from the rest. That is until he's unshackled by Giselle Gewelle, transformed into a zombie, and his full brutality is unleashed. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at that small period of time where Hitsugaya Toshiro was completely stripped of emotion, of morality, and became a cold, killing machine. In a section of Bleach that really opened my eyes to the true latent potential of the young captain, potential that he is so clearly holding back on most of the time. But before we begin the video, guys, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure to do that now, as you're in the perfect place for Bleach content like this every single week. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up as well, as it really does help support me and the channel, as it means that the video gets more exposure and more Bleach fans like yourselves get a chance to see it. And if you want to take that support from me another step further, we do have a Patreon as well, where you can go there, you can get videos like this one early, and you can support me for as little as $1 a month. Everyone whose names are showing up on the screen right now are people who are doing just that, and an enormous thank you and shout out goes out to every single one of them. So, upon narrowly defeating Sternritter I, the Iron Kangdu, towards the start of the second invasion of the Vandenreich, Hitsugaya freezes him and then collapses out of exhaustion on the floor. And it's a very small detail here, and you might have missed it, but we see a small shadow approaching Hitsugaya, and this is quite clearly Sternritter Z, the zombie Giselle Gewelle, making her way around the battlefield and stealing corpses, essentially, to resurrect as part of her own zombie army. It's a nice little detail to know that there are these kind of vulture characters leeching off the ongoing war and making the most of the fact that there are numerous bodies strewn across the war-torn landscape. This plot point isn't revisited for a little while until the March of the Zombies saga is unfolding. Giselle is being defeated at this point by Mayuri Kurotsuchi and his own army of zombies, which include newly resurrected Urankar. And so she calls in her trump card, summoning the commander of her zombie army, Hitsugaya, who shows up, by the way, looking absolutely badass. Now, the Quincy army uniform is my favourite look in Bleach. I think they just look amazingly cool, even cooler than the Shinigami, which is pretty difficult to do, and Hitsugaya pulls it off looking amazingly badass, dressed as one of the villains. In hindsight, it's kind of funny to think that a huge deal is kind of like made out of the fact that Giselle has Hitsugaya under her control because he's a captain, you know, he's one of the upper echelon of the Soul Society. And yet, in secret, she's also got Rose and Kensei and Matsumoto, like 3 captain-level warriors just sort of sitting on the sidelines to come in at a later date, which is kind of funny to think about. And as I mentioned earlier, I like this. I like that Kubo decided to go the zombie route and went full throttle with it, really committed to it, and really committed to having fairly major characters be subjected to this to make it feel like there were real stakes at hand here. Hitsugaya is clearly by far and away the most popular character to be zombified in this way, which is why such a big deal is made out of him becoming a zombie, but it's still really cool nonetheless. Just a small question though, what happened to Isane? Because I'm pretty sure the last time we saw Rose and Kensei's bodies, they were tumbling from Gremi's massive battleground that he created to face Kenpachi, and Isane leaps after them to try and rescue them. And so I guess at some point they fall into Giselle's hands and she's just not around, which is a bit strange because the next time we see her is in the Shinigami's headquarters. But that's not important. What's important is this look we get at Toshiro Hitsugaya, now a cold, mindless zombie under Giselle's control. His full power is hers to use as she pleases. The gamut of abilities he has under his belt are now going to be used against his former comrades, but this time with all kind of shackles removed. Hitsugaya is now a remorseless killing machine. And as strange as it sounds, it's really refreshing to see. As I said, this is a very powerful character, a prodigy in the Bleach universe with an unbelievably strong Zanpakuto, finally letting loose in a way he's never really done before. Everyone is understandably aghast to see Hitsugaya there, and he immediately swings his Zanpakuto, creating a colossal fin of ice that just absolutely towers over the nearby buildings, again on a scale the likes of which we've barely ever seen. You know what this really reminds me of? This looks like an attack by Ryujin Jaka, but obviously ice instead of fire, but that kind of scope, that kind of scale. And I think that's done on purpose. In many ways, Hyorin Maru has always kind of felt like the polar opposite of Yamamoto's all-powerful fire Zanpakuto. And it's so cool to see just that massive wave of almost inescapable ice towering over the battlefield, and we see that it was inescapable. The only reason Yumachika was able to avoid it was because Ikkaku sacrifices himself, sending his comrade flying out of the range of the attack, but Ikkaku has been hit by Hitsugaya's ice. And I think Kubo had a lot of fun with this. Hitsugaya is only a zombie for 2 chapters, and by which I mean you actually get to see him fighting for 2 chapters. And I think Kubo goes out of his way to make this fight look devastatingly painful, devastatingly brutal. Even just the way Ikkaku is lying on the ground, clutching his leg, now frozen over, and he even says that he thinks he's lost his leg. He's lucky to have only lost his leg because Hitsugaya is a captain, and even dead, he's still immensely powerful. But poor old Ikkaku is the first to really feel the brunt of this brand new Terminator-esque Toshiro, who just appears immediately behind them without warning and stabs him right through the back, and there's just a look of utter shock on Ikkaku's face, and Yumachika can't believe it either, and clearly Hitsugaya has come out of absolutely nowhere to be able to pull this off. And without a second thought, Hitsugaya rips his sword out of Ikkaku and immediately brings it back down again to strike him across the back, wounding him even further. And what took me aback about this so much when I first read it was I couldn't believe the brutality that was being inflicted upon Ikkaku, and it would only get worse in a minute. But it's because this fight is so devoid of the usual Bleach tropes. There's so much about honor in Bleach, 1v1 duels, you wait for people to stop talking before you start attacking, unless it's in rare circumstances. For example, Kyoraku versus Stark. Kyoraku attacks Stark in the middle of his conversation, and a big deal is made out of it, because you're supposed to think that Kyoraku fights a little bit underhandedly. Here, that pretense is completely dropped. Hitsugaya is not fighting by anyone's rules but his own, and he's just out to kill. And because of that, that's really refreshing to see, as we see him with maximum efficiency stabbing Ikkaku in the back, bringing his sword back out, ripping it straight back into him again. And in a futile effort, Yumachika steps in to try and protect his friend, locking blades with Hitsugaya, even going so far as to trying to activate Ruiriro Kujaku. And this is when things just get cranked up to 11. Things get crazy. Yumachika tries to block against Hitsugaya. We as readers know this is going to be absolutely ineffective. And Hitsugaya tries something new. His sword is otherwise engaged, so he rams his knee into Yumachika's gut, at the same time encasing his knee in sharp ice, which digs into Yumachika's gut, causing blood to come out. Yumachika doubles over, coughing and hacking. As he does so, Hitsugaya sees a weakness, grabs him by the hair, headbutts him in the face, and then instantly slashes him across the chest to finish him off. It's fluid, it's visceral, and as I mentioned, it is brutal. This is a Hitsugaya that we have never seen before, but it's not even a Hitsugaya we've never seen before. We've very rarely seen a Shinigami who is not called Kenpachi acting like this. Hitsugaya as well is absolutely not a physical fighter. Generally speaking, he likes to activate Shikai or even Bankai immediately and use his ice powers to his advantage, which is fair enough because Hyorin Maru is very powerful. But it's so eye-opening to see Hitsugaya using his knee, grabbing Yumachika by the head, smacking him with his head. Hitsugaya, remember, very small stature. This is not the kind of oppressive battle you would expect from this kind of person, but seeing him not only pull it off, but damn near kill Yumachika is frightening. This is the kind of power you would really expect from a captain who is going crazy, who is mindless, merciless, remorseless, destroying. I would arguably say Ikkaku is probably low captain level, Yumachika about vice captain level, destroying these two characters without even breaking a sweat. There's not even an inkling that Hitsugaya wants to or even needs to use Bankai because he's not in this for any kind of a thrill, he's not protecting anyone, he's out to kill on the orders of his villainous master. So it is eye-opening, but it's also really exciting, and it lends this fight, as short as it is, a real sense of danger, the likes of which we rarely get, to be honest. We rarely get. But I remember reading this and thinking, like, he could be dead. The hit he takes after he gets headbutted, it looks painful. Kubo's drawing this fight in such a way that it just is brutal to the eye. The speed at which Hitsugaya is moving is absolutely incredulous. You know, he headbutts him, and in the blink of an eye, his blade is up and rending Yumachika's body almost open. And it's brutal to see. And those two get taken out almost immediately, and it kind of forces Mayuri himself to get involved. And you get a little bit of clarification here as to how this whole zombification matter is working. I've got to be honest, never really bought or understood this. It feels totally backwards to me, where Mayuri deduces that because Hitsugaya was still alive at the time of his zombification, he is more amenable to what Giselle wants him to do, as opposed to somebody who is dead. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I can understand Hitsugaya's cells being fresher because he's alive, but the fact that his mind is wiped because he was alive, as opposed to him being dead, it seems completely the wrong way around to me. If you are dead, like Bambietta was, her mind should be gone, and she should just be a, lifeless husk, like we've seen a number of the Squad 11 Shinigami are. But apparently it's the other way around, which I don't really think makes an awful lot of sense, to the point where I remember thinking it was a translation error, but whatever. It's Kubo's game at the end of the day. But that's why Hitsugaya is doing what she wants. That's why he's moving with the kind of strength and agility of a living man. It's because he was alive when he was turned. And at least that much makes sense to me. Attempting to maybe grab a bit of glory, Charlotte Coolhorn arrives on the scene and is basically instantly one-shot by Hitsugaya. Hitsugaya just ripping his sword up Charlotte's chest, cutting off his hand at exactly the same time. Charlotte, I don't know what the plan was, just to kind of go in with his bare hand to attack Hitsugaya, who has just annihilated the person who defeated you in battle in Fate Karakura Town, but Mayuri at least chastises him for his stupidity. But now Mayuri really steps into the fray himself to take control of a situation that is spiraling out of control because of Hitsugaya's newfound bloodlust, essentially. Now, this Hitsugaya is all about efficiency, and again, I think it's also really refreshing to get a Bleach fight that is just stripped to the core, to the basics. For the most part, there's very little talking. Mayuri does a bit of talking, and then we do get some pretty hefty exposition a little bit later, but at least while the actual fighting is playing out, it feels quite different. It feels like a sort of Kenpachi-esque battle in a way, but there's just very little talking going on. Instead, we get some really cool moves. And Hitsugaya fights Mayuri briefly. They lock blades, And Mayuri has a mechanism in his sword that allows it to instantly detect where Hitsugaya is going to go and block him. So Hitsugaya instantly realizes my sword is useless, so I'll try the same thing I did against Yu Machika, and he goes to knee Mayuri in the chest. However, Mayuri activates a little shield that, when connected with, wraps itself around Hitsugaya's knee and detonates, kind of blowing his knee to smithereens. But Hitsugaya, being effectively an unfeeling machine, a statue at this point, he's not bothered. He instantly freezes over the injury, which again is a really cool application of his ice, which I think we have seen used a bit like that, but it's really cool to see it dealing with a wound like that instantly in the fray, just instantly covering his knee and allowing him to get back onto the battlefield. And I think it's really neat to see that. Really cool to see him adapting to a situation that he could never have anticipated. He had no way of knowing that that shield was about to blow his knee off, but he does manage to deal with it nonetheless. Realizing he's going to be unable to win this fight quickly, I think, Hitsugaya decides to finally activate Bankai, and basically as soon as he does, he overpowers Mayuri, carving him up the middle, freezing him in this, again, massive just protuberance of ice that comes sticking out of his body, and then he runs him through. And it's kind of cool to think that obviously this fight is a little bit skewed because Mayuri is testing a drug on Hitsugaya, and he already knows that he's safe. So it's difficult to assume how much Mayuri is actually trying here. But regardless, it's cool to see how fast Hitsugaya overpowers someone of Mayuri's caliber and basically just kills them dead. But of course, Mayuri's drug does save him, allowing the scene to replay itself again, which is cool for us because we get to see Hitsugaya's brutality play out once more, where he once again activates Bankai, but this time just instantly freezes Mayuri right down to the bone by dragging his sword across the front like that. And Mayuri collapses to the floor, his body turned brittle and white, and we see it just shattering into pieces as he is dead. He's killed once again. But of course the scene resets, and from that point on, Hitsugaya is rendered somewhat useless, being fully ensnared in Mayuri's trap. But regardless, it's really intriguing to see just how easy it is for Hitsugaya to kill someone, to flat out freeze them to the bone, freeze them to the core with Daiguden Hyorin Maru, and just finish them off. And it's a far, far cry from the Hitsugaya who fights characters like Lupi, Kangdu, Harabel, who doesn't kill them. He still manages to freeze them with his Bankai. With Harabel, she even gets frozen by abilities like Hyoten Hyakoso and survives. Here, Hitsugaya just, in the space of a panel, basically kills Mayuri by freezing him right down to the center and watching his body shatter. And so while I don't think Shinigami living Hitsugaya would necessarily ever fight like this, would ever really tap into his kind of, I guess, true potential, it's really cool to see nonetheless that this guy absolutely has what it takes to be a captain beyond just having a strong and flashy Zanpakuto. He's got the wherewithal to absolutely dominate his enemies, no matter the situation he's in. And really, this moment, this fight, I believe is just used as a vessel by Kubo to really show us what Captain Hitsugaya can do when let off the leash. And I think that's the point of this fight, and I'm all for that because I love seeing that. I love seeing unexpected Shinigami versus Shinigami fights anyway, and this one is really nice. Short but sweet. And I think Hitsugaya is absolutely the standout star of this one for me. It's just so cool seeing this cold, ruthless, efficient, nearly silent version of Hitsugaya kind of just tossing away the frivolities, the pretenses, the ceremonies, and just going for the kill and being so damn effective at fighting. But that's it for this video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this look at Hitsugaya's true, unshackled brutality when he becomes a zombie at the behest of Giselle Gewelle. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of zombie Hitsugaya. Did you love seeing him get a chance to absolutely wail on people in battle and really just throw off the shackles and destroy his opponents? It was honestly a really cool display of his latent strength. Until next time though, guys, make sure to hit subscribe and like if you haven't done already, and until then, I'll catch you later. I'll see you then.